in Virginia, kind of in the middle of the state. It's my pleasure to introduce Scott Fuller-Beatty, who's going to be presenting what he is calling Keep Treading Water to Recovery, which is basically a session about making the best of this terrible situation that we all find ourselves in. He is the owner of the Chadwick Bed and Breakfast in Portland, Maine, and he's also the Director of Sales and Education at Think Reservations. I'm sure many of you have seen Scott present before. And he is being assisted in this venture by two extremely knowledgeable and capable innkeepers from two of my very favorite places in the country. We have Dan Clark, who's the owner and innkeeper at Inn of the Turquoise Bear in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Tammy Holloway, who is the owner and innkeeper at Bay Haven Inn of Cape Charles in Cape Charles, Virginia, which is out on the Eastern Shore, who apparently is undergoing some severe weather at the moment, but hopefully that will not be a problem for us. Please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions, and we will try to hold all of those questions till the end of the presentation. So without further ado, here is Scott.
Thank you, Dan, and hello, everybody. Thanks for making it through a full day of ALP day. It's exciting to participate in the second one. I want to just take a second to also thank Tammy and Dan for assisting me today and throwing in all of their great stuff. They're definitely innkeepers that I look up to as far as their operations, the things that they do, even on like social media, and they have their hands in everything, and they participate in a lot of stuff, and it shows in their properties. I also wanted to ask both of them to join me today because all three of us are in very different situations as far as restrictions that our states have put into place, how we've been able to, how we've either had to stay closed or had the ability to remain open, the changes that we've put in place, how we're doing processes different. So we know that, you know, this is kind of confusing for everybody because every state is requiring different things. It's on a state level. So I thought that this would kind of give just a good example of three properties that are in very, very different situations. So before we start the conversation, I kind of just want to put in perspective a little bit so you can understand a little bit of our commenting. Dan, Inn of the Turquoise Bear, has been able to remain open throughout the entire process. Obviously, some big changes that were there, and has a larger number of rooms than either myself or Tammy. Tammy recently was able to reopen, and her state doesn't have much in the sense of restrictions, although I believe that there are some restrictions as far as guests can stay. My property is located in Portland, Maine, and Maine has the toughest restrictions in all of the country. We can't accept people except from New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine, unless they provide or attest to a negative COVID test, or that they've quarantined for 14 days or plan on quarantining as part of their stay. So it's been very hard, a very hard hit area. At one point it was Vermont and Maine duking it out for who had the worst guidelines in place, or restrictions in place, I should say. But Maine is, I hate to say it, but Vermont, you're doing better than us now. So we're all in very different situations, and we all are kind of coming at this problem from different perspectives. So the way I want to start out today is really, you know, this quote right here: learn from the past to prepare for the future. So what are things that we have learned in the last 3 months about how we've had to change our business model, about things we've had to do differently, new practices we have in place, new safety protocols we have in place? What have we learned to prepare ourselves for the inevitable second wave? That I think that what we need to accept is that, you know, numbers aren't going down. And I do think that there's going to be a second wave. I lean very strongly towards that. And we're going to find ourselves in another situation. And as soon as we're able to accept what has happened and accept that we probably are going to have to deal with some form of severity worse than today, again, that's what's going to allow us to move on. And it's those businesses that are ready and prepared that are going to come come out the other side strong and with the ability to rebuild their businesses. So I want to start here and kind of talking about changes that we've seen with our customers, but that we've seen across the industry as well. So deposit policies, cancellation policies, or other policies that you have. So I want to start with deposit policies and talk about how, you know, I used to be a big proponent to tell people you should charge an advance deposit because it creates that security for your business. Our research showed that when businesses charged deposits that were, say, a first night, the two most common deposits were first night deposit or a 50% deposit. And then the third most common policy was 100% deposit, followed by no deposit at all. Least was some sort of fixed dollar amount deposit. But we saw in that order that the bigger your deposit was, the less cancellations a business had, period. It was very clear in black and white that if you charge a deposit, those businesses received fewer cancellations, and businesses that didn't charge deposits, they received more cancellations. But regardless of whether you did or not, anything that you collected, it always was a liability. And I think a lot of us have learned that in this process of having to have to refund more money than what is coming out the door. So it's not money that we've technically earned yet. It's a liability until that guest has actually come and stayed with us based on our cancellation policies. So it was definitely felt more in this crisis. So I want to open it up to Dan. Dan, is there anything that you made different to your deposit policy that going forward or for a period of time? What have you done, Dan? Did we lose Dan? Tammy, you want to jump in there?
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now, Dan. Oh, we lost you again. Go ahead, Tammy. Why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, like everybody else, the big bleed out came based on our deposit collection. And we are a very tourism-based town. So when March hit, we were already hanging on by our fingertips from a slow winter and have used a lot of those deposits to get through. So it was a pretty rough time. So the number one thing I learned is that we are still taking a deposit. We're still doing 50%, and I feel comfortable with that. I'm not quite comfortable with a lower percentage in the ease of cancellation because we have limited rooms. We're 4 rooms, and high season is when we can make our money. So for now, I've kept it the same, and that seems to be working for us. I did learn very much so the way to kind of convert people to staying to rescheduling or postponing instead, but we've kept our deposit policy the same.
For sure. And Dan, are you there now?
Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, we did not make a change to our deposit policy. We've always charged a 50% for direct bookings. Some of the OTAs are 1 day, but we have not changed our deposit policy. It was always 50% of the stay and any additional enhancements.
And then
I will say,
go ahead.
I will say for some of our returning guests who have been here more than two stays, we don't charge a deposit at all. We go ahead and take their booking. They often book 2 years in advance for the Santa Fe Opera or other events. And if they're a return guest, we have not charged a deposit at all.
Yeah. And I know several businesses that definitely do that with their return guests as sort of a courtesy for them. Kind of for me, mine kind of bleeds into our cancellation policy, which we got hit really hard as a summer tourist destination. By the time we started, we already had about 50% occupancy in July alone. So having those cancellations and those deposits having to have to be returned was sort of a big deal for us. So we actually moved to a $50 deposit that is non-refundable. If you need to cancel for COVID-related reasons, you can move your date. You can also apply that as a gift certificate. But we have some sort of guarantee there. But that $50, we're hoping that that actually attracts guests to actually make a reservation with us. And also changes to cancellation policies. This is one of the biggest questions that we received from our customers about how do I make changes to this. And some of the biggest changes that I've seen here are a reduction from a 2-week or a 10-day down to anywhere from a 72-hour to some people even allowing same-day cancellations. And other policies to sort of think about are those state mandates and any personal requirements that you're putting in place. And I had a conversation with Dan the other day just about my worry about guests who don't, when I can finally host guests, regularly again, what do we do about the guests who refuse to follow them? Tammy or Dan, have you experienced any of that with guests at all?
We haven't. We've been very fortunate that we haven't had any resistance at all. We instituted a COVID kind of registration form 2 days before arrival. And that has been tremendously helpful because it's allowed us to personalize our service. So for example, in our dining room, we have 4 sections set up now that's kind of like, I call it their kindergarten cubby. It's got their name card in their room, and that's where their afternoon snack is, and coffee, and I ask in advance, like what kind of condiments and stuff they want for coffee. So they know that's not touched by anybody else. And I get all that through that COVID response form, but I also ask some of those questions. Have you been in an outbreak area in the last 30 days? Have you been tested? All those types of things. I ask things like, do you want robes in your room? So we can they know those robes are in plastic bags. They have been cleaned. They have not been left from another guest. So we have found that everybody's really appreciated that. And we haven't had any resistance to it at all. The mask thing, people kind of figure out on their own what their comfort level is, but very well, I haven't had any resistance.
Good. And Dan, you?
Well, we have made a significant change to our cancellation policy. We were at a 14-day notice with a $50 cancellation penalty. And in March, we moved to a 24-hour, no penalty whatsoever. And we have seen a higher incidence of cancellations, I would say. We were in a position, I think, like Tammy, where in March, just in the last 2 weeks of March, we reimbursed over $90,000 of advance deposits, and we ran out of money. So we changed our policy March 16th to we could only refund with a gift certificate for a future stay for the entire amount of the deposit. And that was, of course, a very difficult conversation to have with guests. Since we've had our SBA EIDL loan approved, we have a little more flexibility now. But so I will say that we are seeing some 24-hour cancellations, but mostly 3 or 4 days in advance. We're allowed to be at 50% capacity right now, and we're at that capacity, and we're turning away guests. So I know if I have a cancellation with a few days notice, I'm most likely going to be able to refill that to our capacity. We haven't required any other policies. We've always served breakfast from 7:30 to 9:30. When I'm on vacation, I don't know when I want breakfast until I wake up. And we provide that flexibility. We provide dining on a patio or in our dining room or in the room. We've reconfigured each room to provide dining in room. So we haven't installed any other policies. We request that they wear a mask, and most have been respectful and keep their social distance, but we don't have any other new policies relative to COVID.
Yeah, we've been lucky so far with our guests. Our state mandates inside any business to be wearing masks, and we haven't had problems with that. They can take it off when they're seated in the dining room and obviously when they're in their room. with their door closed. So it sounds like, Dan, you're touching on exactly what I spoke about before, is that your policy has changed when it comes to cancellations. You are seeing more cancellations. Bravo that you're able to get those filled given enough time, though. That's really, really good news. I am going to move on to the next slide just because looking at the time, I want to make sure we get through everything. So this next section that I want to kind of talk about is rates. And I put together this little, this how we can really start to think about rates, because I have seen so many questions on innkeeper forums, on webinars about, should I be discounting my rates? I think you all have learned today, at least all the sessions I've been on have said, don't discount your rates. And I think, 99% of the time, that's exactly the advice that you need. But I think a lot of us actually could use a process to figure out how our rates, should our rates be adjusted or not adjusted. So I put together this little, spelling it out for you. With the R meaning review. So what is your original or your usual plan that you have in place? Did you have a plan in place this year, and are you following with that? Make sure that you review and take a look at that. And then I think even more so than ever, we do need to be analyzing, what are our competitors charging? Now, this is where you could get in trouble if you have stuck to your guns with your rates, because if everybody is around you has lowered their rates and it appears that they're getting more bookings than you, then your rate could be a problem. So I do kind of want to put that out there as a caveat, that I think this analyze step is something that you should be doing. Look at what your competitors are doing. Look at what hotels around you are doing. I'll tell you what, most of the branded hotels, their rates are much lower than what they ever were. But ask yourself, is a hotel really, has it ever really been your competitor in your area? Has it not? So take a look at what that is, because if you're the highest priced place in the area, but you never have been the highest priced place in the area, it could be an indication that, hey, I need to make some changes. Or if you have already gone in and lowered your rates, like as a reaction to everything that's going on, and you see that your competitors haven't, but they're still getting just as much bookings, the traffic seems to be the same, then maybe you need to revert back to your original rates. You could be undercutting yourself, doing more work for less money. Next step is testing. So what do you want to do based on that research and your needs? We need to think about what our needs are. Like, were you able to get loan money to help push you through? Were you not able to? Do we need to try to recoup some of the months that we were closed? Are we even going to be able to recoup the months that we were closed? Is any of that a possibility? So go ahead and test or try out, is what I originally was thinking. Try out what your rates are going to be. Maybe that is your original plan, but you got to test it to see if it works. And then the most important step of all of this, and you've heard me say it in webinars before, which is you have to then evaluate. Is what you're testing working, or do you need to adjust? Dan, I'd like you to kind of tell us what you did, what you're experiencing with your rates right now.
Well, we had been on a journey last year. I had Carol and Tom Edmondson in, and I think Carol's on the call, and we got advice that we need to increase our rates. That was substantiated by Whitestone and Vikram and our analysis there. And we went through a process a year ago in April where we suddenly increased some of our rates $180 a night. Scary and crazy.
Wouldn't we all love to do that?
Yeah. And honestly, we saw higher occupancy and higher record occupancy for all of last year. And so we are we're not the highest lodging in town. There's a boutique hotel often listed as the top 10 hotels in the world, which is, you know, significantly higher than we are. But amongst the 40 B&Bs just in our town and the multiple hotels, we are among the highest priced. And so early in March, when I saw the $90,000 of deposits being reimbursed and all these cancellations, I lowered my rates about $100. But my competitors were lowering their rates $200, and we were already $200 ahead of them. So it was a significant change. Recently, you know, as an example, in May of last year, we were at about 90% occupancy, and we had $90,000 in revenue. Our May this year, we were at 11% occupancy and had $13,000 of revenue. So we did lower our rates about $100. I have since backed off of that because we're at our forced 50% occupancy. And so I've started increasing the rates, and right now we're about $60 off our top last year, because for the foreseeable future, we're at our maximum, and we're waiting to see if New Mexico will allow us to operate at a higher occupancy. So we're doing as well as we possibly can, and our competitors literally are selling their rooms for $200 less a night than we are, and we're full and they are not. So we're in a really good place that may not be representative of most.
And that's where I think that evaluate step is so important, because Dan could have just coasted by. There's nothing that tells you have to go look at your rates, but because Dan has learned that he needs to pay attention to this and do the evaluate step, that he's making so much more than what he would if he hadn't have raised those rates. He's hitting his occupancy, what he's allowed to take in, so he might as well try to get what he can get for it. And Tammy, you just opened up recently, but when we were looking at your calendar the other day, I barely saw an open night coming up.
Yeah, we're fortunate. Now we are only 4 rooms, but Virginia doesn't have any limitations on percentage. So when we opened June 10th, we were 100%. I was like Dan, tempted to lower rate. One of the things I'd worked on with Scott years ago was.
Oh, I think we lost Tammy. It could be the thunderstorms. Tammy, just shout back in if you can. But what she was saying is that her and I worked on a little bit of pricing, and what, based on something like her booking pace report and stuff like that, to be able to fill that. So my biggest thing that I want people to know is if you have lowered your rates, take a look at what you're bringing in, because you could be doing a lot more work for less money when people would have been willing to pay for it. And, kind of hold tight there. Always discount last. That's kind of my opinion. So we have a couple more slides, so I'm going to kind of zoom through this. I do want to kind of talk about some of this really quick, but extend your stay.
Scott?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can we go back just for the test scenario? We have always been kind of hesitant, and no one in our marketplace of 40 B&Bs has had a kind of rate type that was no breakfast included. We've always kind of said our rates are based on breakfast and double occupancy, and there's no adjustment from there. We offer specials now and then, but Liz Hamilton, who developed my website and with Whitestone Marketing back in the day, stayed with us a couple weeks ago, and I was talking with her about, because I have a competitor in town who started offering a no breakfast rate, and it's kind of against everything I believe in and what we offer as value to clients. But I said, well, and she said, you got to test it. So we tested it, and I'll just say we ended up offering a no breakfast rate at $60 less per night off our bar, off our best available rate. And I came about that because there's a restaurant in town Cafe Pasquale that's been in town for 40 years. They're revered. And I looked at their breakfast menus, which are similar to some of the offerings we make. And if I actually took them item by item, a la carte, and added it up, it would be on an $80 difference. It was $80 charge. So I came up with 60. And I will just say, you know, we've only offered it out through the end of July at the moment, but we've had 26 room nights book that rate since probably mid-April through the end of July, and it's $4,000 in income. And I think it's because we still have a lot of people traveling from point A to point B. They're here one night or two, and they're not comfortable with the breakfast service yet in a COVID world, even though all the changes we've made. And so I don't think I'll be surprised if a year from now we'll be offering that rate. But right now, I think it was a wonderful test. And right now, in evaluating it, I think I'm going to keep it through the end of the year, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I think I love that you shared that story, because that kind of hits our middle point on this next slide, which is the stay your way rate types. I know a lot of you have done sessions with, no, it's okay, it's great. I know a lot of you have done sessions with Terry Hamer, who really kind of came up, as far as I understand, kind of came up with the whole stay your way. If you want to get some great ideas about stay your way, check out Herman Hill in Missouri. But you know, do we have to offer all the services to your guests? Can we gain a financial advantage by limiting that usual service? And that's exactly what Dan did. And it goes back to that rates. You've got to test it. You got to analyze it. You got to see if it's worth it. And that's attracting guests for Dan. It's also, you know, for a lot of us, it's taking a heck of a lot longer to prepare breakfast. So if you have a couple less breakfasts to put out on the table, that makes it a heck of a lot easier. And I think Dan also touched on a really important point, which is we also don't want to pressure guests into doing something that they don't want to do. Maybe they don't want to be in the dining room, and that's okay. You know, that we got to respect that too. Tammy, have you been able to join us again? I'm not sure if she's back, but so just the other 2 points on this slide, the extend your stay with value added. So can you avoid discounting? So encouraging longer stays, are you able to add value, add something to their stay to make that worth it? But also discounted rates for longer stays could really be toward your advantage. The one thing my staff is telling me about and talked with Tammy about yesterday is, you know, she feels like she lives in the laundry room. It takes from dawn till dusk to get all the laundry done, well, past dusk now, to get the laundry done. So having a turn, but you know, I am happy to offer a slight discounted rate for someone that is staying for 3 or 4 or 5 nights, where we're able to not have to do all that laundry, to do all of those turns. So it could be to your financial advantage. So I don't want to just say that never discount, but just think about where discounts actually have the most financial advantage for yourself. And also think about packaging both new and traditional. Let's think about the new norm, and those things like hiking packages and things that follow the things that people are most concerned about, social distancing and all of that. But also, let's not forget about our traditional packages. People are still coming to your property because they want to have a little romance. And just because it isn't your package, we don't have to necessarily make all of our language feel like everything is about COVID. Remember, people are also coming and traveling with us to escape their reality for a little bit. And this may be their only vacation of the year. I'm not saying we don't need to do things safely, but also let's make sure that we're keeping those things that we don't need to throw COVID into everything if it doesn't need to be there, is my point there. And kind of moving in that direction is really thinking outside the box. At Think Reservations, on our social media, on our Facebook page and our Instagram, we actually had a bunch of our thinkers tell us what they were doing. And some of these things were things to actually help the properties make more money during those times that they were closed. But some of these things were just goodwill, which got them great publicity, or gave them stuff to post on Facebook and Instagram, to get on Twitter, all sorts of things. So, for example, Blessings on State B&B, she's a gardener, and she put together these flower seed kits and literally gave them to all of her neighbors. And then also later on put together some self-care kits. And now these flowers, these wildflowers, are growing in her neighborhood, and she has this new relationship with her neighbors and the local people that are there. It was just something that she felt was about doing something that was just really nice. Gibson Mansion, they were doing Free Scone Friday with the wonderful scones that they make there, but also for Mother's Day, they sold these beautiful scone bouquets. You could also donate scones to teachers and hospital workers and all of that. There's a ton of things here. And like I said, some of these things were to help make money during times that they had to be closed, but some of this stuff was really about still promoting the property. I loved when I read about how the Painted Lady Bed and Brew, they offered a discounted gift certificate,
like,
and they were able to get that picked up by the New York Times.
Okay,
So they got
really? Really?
That's awesome.
Well, let's hope they can talk, that. So
I think we got someone on off mute, so go ahead and
I don't
mute
think
yourself
she's
if you
that
just
good.
on
She's
yourself.
shooting a banner for
on here.
Facebook. I asked on my chat, what is this banner?
Dan or Eric, are you able to mute everyone except the presenters? Thanks. Okay. So just some of these things are some things of really thinking outside the box. Please visit our Facebook page or our Instagram page to read more about what these were, if any of these things seem really interesting to you. They're all posted up there. And the last section I wanted to touch on before we went into Q&A is really talking about OTAs, because OTAs, we know we hate them. We know we don't like them. They feel like they're stealing all our money. And if you've ever done a webinar with me where we talk about OTAs, I always ask people, let's forget that that's what our relationship feels like with them. Because part of the problem with our relationship with them is us. We aren't using them to our advantage. We aren't understanding them well enough to really make them business partners in helping us book our properties and help us make more revenue, not the same revenue, replacing revenue that would have come in direct, but how do we work it so that they're truly helping our businesses be more profitable? And this picture really kind of summed it up for me, because if we think about it, our pool, the people that we're able to reach out to, whether it be through social media or our website, it truly is a pool of people. Whereas OTAs are a vast ocean of people. So at this point, especially if you're in a situation where you have rooms that are not selling, being able to basically dip into their pool is going to get you that exposure to get those, help you get those rooms filled. We have to remember that rooms have a cost associated with them, even if they aren't booked. So we want to make sure that we're getting those empty rooms filled where we can get them right now. It costs money. You have a mortgage regardless. You have an electric bill regardless. You have a water bill, a gas bill. You have all of those things regardless. So an empty room does have a cost associated with it. So if we're able to recoup some of that through the additional assistance of OTAs, that's a good thing in my book. So the biggest thing to really take away from this is know what your booking capabilities are. If you know that right now booking weekends are going to be no problem for you, you should not be making weekends available to the OTAs. If you know with the phone calls and the web reservations that you're getting that you can fill your inn twice over, there is no reason to be offering those through OTAs. But if you need that assistance, say during the week, you definitely should be putting that out there. For me, in my high season, I would never imagine having any availability out as far as I do on the OTAs. But for me, I'm in a situation where it is desperate. We have 9 room nights booked for July, and we just had a cancellation come in right before this. So I think it's less than 9 now. So I need all the help I can get if I'm going to at all make money this summer. You know, I'm really happy for my co-presenters that they're in a better place. But use the OTAs because get out of your pool and get into their ocean, because they have more. I always say your website has hundreds of eyes on it. Their websites have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of eyes on it. And the more likelihood of the more people you can get seeing you on various places, the better. As far as rates and restrictions, we all know that your contracts say that you're going to have parity there. And I have to agree. I think this is the time where it doesn't matter where it's coming from. If you have it out on an OTA, you have it out there because you don't think you're going to sell it. And if you're able to get that, I think it's worth a 15% commission, 15 to 20% commission to get that reservation through the door. Think of it as I just gained 80 to 85% instead of I made $0 because it never sold. I think that's a real mindset we need to get over. Also, Airbnb is, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just going to say, you know, I always played the game for years with the rates we sent out to OTAs being about 20%, 25% higher than our own. And I will give a shout out to my folks at Whitestone who just said in the new reality, the new COVID reality, you know, you take the reservations wherever you can get it. And since then I set my bar rate and it goes out to our one night stays because I offer a more than one night stay discount at 15% per night. But any other rate out there other than the no breakfast rate is the bar rate. And I send it out to all the OTAs. And so I've stopped playing that game because I think, you know, a recovery is a recovery like you, Scott, have been preaching for a few years now. Anywhere you can get it, you get it. And we're happy to get it. So I've stopped playing that game. And now our bar rate is our OTA rate as well.
Tammy, are you here? Do you have anything to add to that?
We actually, because summer's our high season, we don't share a lot with the OTAs in high season, but what I'm doing is like you taught me years ago, and I look at it every Monday and kind of look ahead to if I need to make those adjustments. And I still have it blocked on my calendar from that day we sat down together, and I stick to it. And that's how I do my revenue management as well, and increasing where I need to. But I add it to an OTA. If I see a series of rooms available during a weekday, then I'll give one to the OTA. Just to keep us listed kind of through doing that. But we don't use them as much in the high season. We will in the fall.
I know, and lucky you. Again, I'm gonna feel bad about myself because your books look so nice. There is no reason for you to offer anything to the OTAs right now. So
yeah, I know.
So
I was
again,
ready to give them away, you know, in April, but, but I'm making hay while it's sunshine because who knows when it's not going to be there, you know.
Exactly.
That's all I can do. Yeah.
Yep. And also, when I'm out of my full screen and I'm able to actually look at the chat, I will throw a link into a story that I wanted to share with you all. It's an article about the Airbnb comeback story. Is that Airbnb is really seeing an uptick in reservations, especially in the last 30 days in the month of June. They have, for me personally, and we've seen this on our side at Think Reservations, is that Expedia and Booking.com reservations are very low, very, very, very low, even though customers have availability out there. However, we're seeing Airbnb also, I'm not surprised by the story. A lot of Airbnb reservations are being made. Now, I know there's a lot of hate out there specifically for Airbnb, but just know that Airbnb has a professional category for us now. So I really do encourage any property that if you're not already working with Airbnb, it's another platform you could be making bookings from. The last 5 reservations I have received, last 4 reservations I've received, 3 of them were made on Airbnb. And all of last year, I had about 8 Airbnb reservations total. So all of these reservations are for coming in July, or they were here in June, but they found us and they booked through Airbnb. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll take it because it's what we needed. So we definitely are seeing from our customer base that
I have
Airbnb
one
is
comment.
Yeah.
I have a comment on Airbnb, and I know our community is small, so we're able to do things a lot differently. But we've gone like a different level, and that is that I've built relationships with our Airbnbs and VRBOs in town, a good group of them, probably about 30 of them. And for our community, that's a lot. And we actually do a lot on Instagram, and we tag each other and build a good relationship. And as they're saying they are booked through the summer, they don't have anything left until the fall, I'm reaching out to them personally and saying, I'm so excited that you're back on track. We're filling in nicely, but we've got some onesies, twosies to fill during the week. Would love if you shoot people our way, vice versa, you know, and that relationship has really become very strong because of it.
I think that's an amazing suggestion, Tammy.
Yeah.
I really, that's like my takeaway. This is why I invited Tammy. This is why I invited Dan, because I always learn from them. They are excellent innkeepers.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah, go ahead.
5-minute warning.
Okay, not a problem. Good, because we have the Q&A slide next. So last thing I want to throw in there, a lot of you may not have heard about Hotel Tonight. I know several of the larger PMSs connect now to Hotel Tonight. So they're a small player in the OTA game, but we're also seeing that they're having a big impact for properties as well, because Hotel Tonight actually really focuses on filling last minute reservations. So same day or next day availability. So if you do have a lot of same day or next day availability, and your property management system connects to Hotel Tonight, I definitely would also recommend throwing that into your arsenal. Because Hotel Tonight is actually owned by Airbnb, although they're 2 totally different platforms. So I definitely would say that, because we've been connected with Hotel Tonight for about 3 or 4 years now. And with Hotel Tonight, almost every reservation is the same day or the next day. And those are rooms that we're going to spoil. So really, I think that those have great impact. So we're going to move over to questions and answers. So I just want to throw out there that I picked this slide because I want to make sure all of us attending today were able to stay on the floaties. And like I said, not sink all the way down to the bottom. We can make it through this, and we just have to be smart about it. And we have to make sure that we're learning from this first wave about what to do in the next wave. So I'm going to exit out of my screen so that I can put those links in. But Dan, go ahead with any questions.
Okay, the only question I see was for Dan regarding his no breakfast fee. And she was wondering if anybody ever books under that fee and then comes in and says, well, I actually do want breakfast. And if that is that a problem?
You know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so out of the 26 guests so far that we've had no breakfast rates, we've had one guest who came down at the morning and said, how do I order breakfast? We reminded them of the fact that we had, that they booked the no breakfast rate, because we offer coffee, tea, and a baked good, even if they do the no breakfast rate. And they declined the breakfast, and we're very cordial about it. So we haven't had a problem with it. But it's still not something I inherently want to offer.
Scott, just one thing we've asked on our form that we do 2 days in advance is the option for a sit-down breakfast or a to-go breakfast, which is much like Dan's breakfast that he talked about is automatic. There's no rate change, but that gave people who are nervous about sitting in a room with other people a choice. And we probably had about 5 people take advantage of that because we're able to create our dining room where they still have the conversational experience, but at a distance.
Yeah. I wanted to just point out to everybody that I did just put the links for the Airbnb comeback story in the chat for everybody. And I also put a link to, Tammy mentioned my 15 Minutes on Monday program. In our virtual room upstairs, if you go to our table, there's an information button that you can click on. And we have several downloads that we bring to conferences with us. I think you still have access to it throughout the rest of the day. Go up there, download anything you want, but that's the 15 Minutes on Monday checklist for everyone. Any other questions, Dan, that we can answer?
I don't see any, Scott. Just got a note from Eric. He's just reminding us that the networking lounge is open until 5 p.m. for anybody who wants to join that.
Oh, I think we lost you, Dan.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, there was just a note from Eric that the networking lounge is open until 5 for anybody who wants to join that.
Here we go. Well,
Scott, can I jump in just for a second? This is Elliot.
Yeah, go ahead, Elliot.
So with the breakfast option, I've traveled to Virginia and New York State and Connecticut in the last 2 weeks, and I haven't gone to breakfast at any of those properties. I just don't. It's hard enough traveling, and so it was one less thing I had to think about.
I think that's a perfect example. My question for you, Elliot, is if you had the option to book a was that a decision that morning, or was that a decision, if you had that in the booking option, would you have booked a breakfast not included rate?
Two of them were, I had that option and took it.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Big Bad Eric Spence is in the room, which means he's going to kick us out. So.
No, I'm not kicking you out. I just wanted to point out, Scott is right. You still can go up and visit the virtual marketplace, stop in any of them. Please click on all the information, click around on those booth spaces. Obviously, the live links won't work, but anything that has extra information, videos, please stop by and view as much as you can in those virtual marketplace booths. And thank you, Scott. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Dan, for taking the time out of your day and being a part of the ALP Development Day.
There you go. Thank you, everybody. So glad you're able to join us. We wish we could be in person, but I'll tell you what, it's so nice to see so many of your faces that we get to run into. Just send y'all a big virtual hug, and I look forward to seeing you when we can see each other next in person. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you.